Getting it done on the road. The Owls pick up just their second win away from the Lynx this season.
But it's enough to get Temple eligible for some December football. Inside the Nest is live and it starts right now. Welcome back to another edition of Inside the Nest. He's Dan Wilson. I am Brooklyn Vaughn. We're talking all things Tulane today, touching base with Rod Carey at his presser and taking a look around the rest of the AAC.
But first, we'll start with a recap of the Owls' exciting win against the Bulls down in Tampa last Thursday. The Owls were coming off a bye, returning to the field for the first time since blowout losses to SMU and UCF. Temple taking on USF in Tampa on Thursday Night Football. Owls trying to become bowl eligible for the third consecutive game this season. Opening USF possession, and quarterback Jordan McLeod is sacked by DeAndre Kelly. Just the second sack of his four-year career, and the ball pops out. Recovered by Sean Bradley, and the Owls defense comes up with a turnover on the opening drive. Later in the first, Todd Centeo playing his first series at quarterback. Give goes to Jagger Gardner. Beats USF defenders down the sideline, and the Owls offense is in business inside the 5. Now, third and goal. Kenny Aboa on the tight end outplay, and he scores just his second touchdown of the season. Later, now in the second quarter here, and Russo forcing one into coverage, his 9th interception on the year, and USF now has the ball. USF on offense now. The ball is sacked. Quincy Roche, 3.5 sacks in this one, 9 sacks for the Temple defensive line in this one. And on the very next play, crossing pattern, ball is popped out, scooped up by Sam Franklin, and that gives the Owls a 14-0 lead here in the third quarter. Now, we'll go later in the third quarter, just about a minute to play here. USF on their final red zone possession, or on their first red zone possession of the entire game. Jordan McLeod connecting over the middle for the touchdown, and just like that, USF is within 7. We'll go to the fourth, and Quincy Roche yet again sacking Jordan McLeod. He had his way all night long. Final play here, desperation time for USF. They can't get anything going. Owls go down to Tampa, beat USF 17-7, become bowl eligible for the 6th consecutive season.
Final score out of Tampa, 17-7. The Owls win this one, and there's a couple names who got it done. Jaden Blue had himself a day, catching 11 passes for 121 yards, and Jagger Gardner was responsible for taking over the Owls' run game this week. He put up 133 yards in 25 attempts. It was just another day for Anthony Russo, who completed 15 of his 21 passes for 164 yards and threw an interception. The Owls defense stayed strong despite key injuries to Efine Maijay and Benny Walls, holding the Bulls to under 100 receiving yards from both Wilcox and Miller combined. And Jordan Conkright's stay on the ground was not nearly as productive as Jagger Gardner's. Conkrite ends the day with only 8 carries for 21 yards.
As mentioned, the Owls pass rush had a day for the record books. A defense that averaged 2.5 sacks per game a week ago got 9 sacks in just one game against USF. 5 different players got to Jordan McLeod, as Quincy Roche's 3.5 sacks more than doubled his season total. USF simply had no answer for Temple's defensive front all evening long. And elsewhere in the American, the Owls got some help this weekend. A shocker. Tulsa picking up its first AAC win of the year, taking down UCF 34-31. The Golden Hurricane mustered up a fourth quarter comeback to hand UCF its second AAC loss of the 2019 season, which is big for the Owls' slim but plausible conference championship game appearance hopes. And another day without Ray. The Owls were without their freshman running back due to injury on Thursday night, handing the backfield duties over to Jagger Gardner and even a little bit of Tavon Ruley. Gardner played well in Davis's absence, rushing for 133 yards on 25 carries. The availability of Davis and how it affects the dynamic of the Owls' backfield down the stretch of the season is certainly something to keep an eye on.
In a few minutes, we'll hear what Rod Carey has to say about these injuries in his weekly press conference. But until then, our beat reporter Dom Gillespie is live at Edberg-Olsen Hall to tell us more on what he expects to hear today from Coach Carey.
Talk to us, Dom.
Thanks, guys. As you mentioned, Rod Carey is getting ready to address the media in just a few minutes. Some things you can expect him to hit on is injuries to running back Ramon Davis and Benny Walls. Expect to get updates on them. And if you saw Thursday night games, left guard Vince Picozzi, I received word yesterday he will be out for the season. Expect to hear how the Owls plan on moving forward without their big fellow there. Some other things to keep an eye on, Russo and Centeo, not the flashiest of games, and Centeo was the one who put together the touchdown scoring drive. So expect to see if Carey mentions whether his snaps go up or down moving forward towards the rest of the season. And of course, in the game in the first half, Chappelle Russell gets ejected for a targeting penalty. Again, Temple beating Temple. Can't do that. Expect to hear Carey hit on that and talk about the other 4 penalties that happened earlier this season. But until then, reporting from Edberg-Olsen Hall, I'm Dom Gillespie. Brooklyn and Dan, back to you guys.
Thank you so much, Dom. And after SMU and UCF games, we took the time to break down exactly what went wrong for the Owls. But this week, it's not all bad news.
While it wasn't pretty, the Owls were able to play well enough to win on the road. Let's take a look at key storylines from Thursday's game. And I'll start with this, with none other than the quarterback position. You heard from Dom Gillespie mention it just a few moments ago that Todd Centeo played 2 full drives, one of which ended with the redshirt sophomore completing a 1-yard touchdown pass to tight end Kenny Yeboah. While Centeo wasn't particularly effective, Rod Carey showing the willingness to put Centeo in after Russo threw an interception is something to look out for the remainder of the season.
A noteworthy injury that looms over the Owls is that of freshman running back Ray Davis. But even though Davis didn't play in this one, redshirt senior Jagger Gardner had no problem handling the running load to himself. Gardner ran the rock 25 times for 133 yards. That's good for 5.3 yards per carry. While he didn't find the end zone, he did have a 57-yard run that set up the Owls for their only offensive touchdown on the night.
And we'd be remiss if we didn't highlight Temple's defensive line. The unit had its best performance of the season in Tampa, sacking USF quarterback Jordan McLeod 9 times. As we mentioned, Quincy Roche led the way with 3.5 sacks. Zach Mesday, Dana Levine, DeAndre Kelly, Dan Archibong, and Arnold Abakati joined the sack party as well. That's different Owls recording at least 1 sack. The defensive line was also able to hold USF to 1.6 yards per rush and had the Bulls' offensive line on its heels the entire game.
And one point we've been stressing all season long has been Temple's inconsistency on the road. While Thursday night wasn't a complete game, the Owls were able to hold the Bulls scoreless in the first half. This was the first time the Owls held their opponents scoreless on the road all season, and the second time overall, with the first instance occurring against Georgia Tech. Temple's offense was ineffective for most of the game, but the defense was able to pick up their slack and ensured USF had to battle from behind. With this win, the Owls become bowl eligible with a record of 6-3. Dan, we talked last week about the bowl hunting situation, but now as that becomes more of a reality, let's take an even closer look at where exactly the Owls could end up and who they could face. One of the possibilities, of course, the Birmingham Bowl in Birmingham, Alabama, where the Owls would be tested against an SEC opponent. That would kick off the 2020 year, of course. And the Gasparilla Bowl is always a possibility. It would be familiar territory for the Owls, who won this one back in 2017 under the direction of Jeff Collins. This year, the Owls could head back to Tampa to take on a Conference USA team on December 23rd.
Yeah, December 24th, the Owls could pick up a ticket to the 50th state for the furthest possible destination in the Hawaii Bowl. This Christmas Eve showdown would either come against a Mountain West team or against an opponent such as BYU. BYU is currently 5-4 and needing 1 more win to become bowl eligible. And as far as the Mountain West, you're looking at teams like Boise State, San Diego State, or even the host of the University of Hawaii. They played in this game just a year ago. The Owls have a number of options that would send them down to Florida as well, including the Boca Raton Bowl, which would be a December 21st matchup against a team from the Owls' former conference, the MAC. At the top of that conference right now, you have Western Michigan, Central Michigan, and Miami of Ohio. And you also have a team in Buffalo who's a win away from bowl eligibility. And of course, the Owls lost to them earlier this season. And lastly, on December 27th, you have the coldest possible option in a location the Owls are quite familiar with in Navy Marine Corps Memorial Stadium for the Military Bowl. It would feature an AAC school against an ACC school. Back in 2016, the Owls played back-to-back games in Annapolis after winning the AAC championship. Matt Rule took the job at Baylor, and 24 days later, interim head coach Ed Foley lost 34-26 at the hands of Wake Forest.
And another important thing to add about the Military Bowl might be beneficial to the Owls drawing a larger crowd size. But they do have another possibility of playing in the Cure Bowl, which would take them back down south. Of course, on December 21st in Orlando, the Owls would take on a Sun Belt opponent, maybe App State, Georgia Southern, Georgia State, or Arkansas State. Another trip down south, but this time to Frisco, Texas, would be in store for the Owls if they were selected to play in the Tropical Smoothie Cafe's Frisco Bowl. A fabulous for a bowl game, by the way. There are lots of possibilities for the Owls who would face in this one, as the bowl's only conference tie-in is the American Athletic Conference. Well, it's time for us to go ahead and take our first break of the day.
But when we come back, we'll take you live to Rod Carey's weekly press conference. Inside the Nest, we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Inside the Nest. There's the podium where Rod Carey will be addressing the media in a few minutes after the Owls' huge win on the road.
And while the Owls return to the Link, they got a much-needed road win last Thursday, even if it didn't come in the most glamorous fashion. And I think that's the overall takeaway from this game is, a win is a win, and they got it on the road.
Absolutely, and it's not a common theme that they've had to endure this season. So I think maybe Rod Carey will kind of address that today in his press conference. He's caught a little bit of heat for, kind of blowing off their road game struggles. So maybe he will touch on that today.
They go down, they get a road win in the AAC. And by the way, they're hosting a team this week in Tulane that hasn't had success on the road either. They'd have just one road win. So almost a similar kind of resume in that sense, but it's much needed. It's kind of hard to believe the AAC championship game hopes are still distant, but still remain possible.
Still alive. And I think the most important or the most impressive factor in all of this not glamorous win, obviously a lot of it has to do with their key players that are out for injuries. You have Ifeanyi Maide finding his way back in, but then guys like Benny Wall's still out, Ray Davis still out. But right guard Vince Picozzi, how about that?
This game,
out for the year.
This game came at a cost. Vincent Picozzi, a huge member of that offensive line, has been ruled out for the season. So that's not even something we're going to have breaking today. That's already been announced. Yeah, they definitely need to get healthier. It's kind of been a reoccurring theme with this team as well. But they go down, they get a win. But the defensive line, you'd have to imagine he really hits on them. 9 sacks in this game, just pressure all day long. And if they can continue even half that amount of pressure in this Tulane game or down the stretch of the season, they're going to be much more successful than they have been.
So just mentioning those 9 sacks, I believe it's something like they garnered over 30% of them of their
one game,
sacks of the entire season in just this game alone. So it does speak a lot to their behalf on how impressive their performance was on Thursday night. And of course, getting the offense going from here on out. Oh, it looks like that is our guy, Rod Carey, making his way to the podium. We're going to go ahead and drop into Ebergolson Hall now to hear what he has to say.
All right. How are we?
Good, how are you?
Great. Awesome. All right. So, what are we going to talk about USF quick?
Yeah, real quick.
Okay. Obviously, we're happy with the win. A lot of things to correct, especially offensively coming out of that game. Defensively, I thought they played outstanding. Special teams, I thought we did a good job in the punt game. We had, an opportunity to affect the game there, certainly with the first punt return and didn't quite get it done. But overall, I thought the kicking game was solid. So then moving on to Tulane, obviously they're a fantastic football team. They run the ball with half dozen backs, and you'll see them all in this game. And their quarterback runs, and their quarterback's got a strong arm, throws the ball well, too. They have some fast wide receivers. Certainly their O-line is well coached, and they do a lot. You can tell they're in year 3 of their program and what he wants to do offensively. And then defensively, they just attack you, and they keep coming after you. And then they're very good in the kicking game as well. So, it's just a good football team, guys, that's, we're going to have to dot our I's and cross our T's too. So with that, we can open it up for questions. Excuse me.
Rod, you faced a team last week that had a quarterback that was elusive, and now you're facing another one again. Does it help you that you faced USF in trying to get after the Tulane quarterback?
Yeah, well, I think athletically it does, because you have to account athletically for the quarterback being able to extend plays. But they also run their guy extensively and do it completely different than USF does. Different personnel groups, different formations, different schemes. So it's certainly from the athletic standpoint, yeah, we have to account for them, but scheme-wise, there isn't much carryover.
What do you think of him? He's had a pretty big year.
I think he's a fantastic quarterback. I think he throws it well too, which makes him extremely dangerous. He's got a cannon for an arm, so he can throw it really deep too. And then he can extend plays even when they're not running him, or when it's not zone read and those things, and he runs the offense effectively. You can tell with all the backs that are behind him, and it doesn't change him. He has complete control of the offense.
You mentioned their six-headed monster there, running back. How much harder does that make it prepared for them to get right for them?
Well, they're just going to keep rolling fresh bodies at you, so that's the biggest challenge. And they're all really good players, obviously, because they wouldn't play them if they weren't all good players. So usually in the third quarter, when a back's tired too and a defense is tired, they're going to be fresh guys rolling at you, so it's a challenge.
What about the loss of Vince Picozzi? I mean, what does that mean for this offensive line group?
Yeah, I mean, Vince is a good player, and we're obviously going to miss him, but we've been working with our other guys for these moments, right, to step up. And so right now you got a big battle going on there between Pinto's obviously started a game, Hooper, Wagugu, Sestili's even in there, as far as who could be, and it could be a combination of those guys. It might not just be one guy that replaces Vince, because he was such a good player, and where these guys are at in their careers too, being a little younger. So younger experience-wise. In Pinto's case, he's obviously a junior, so we'll have to see.
Graham Mobley got hurt in the UCF game.
Mm-hmm. He did.
He got surgery out there.
Yeah, he got clipped. And that was my fault. I think I told Mark or whatever. I forgot to bring that up to you guys when you guys asked about injuries. He got rolled up on and then had to have surgery, so he's done for the year.
Raymond and Benny, how are they?
So Ray, really hopeful that he has he's practiced. He's looked good. I would expect him to play. Benny practiced today, full for the first time. I'm probably a little more reserved on him, but would certainly like to see tomorrow and how the rest of the week progresses to see.
What about Centeo? Obviously, he led the touchdown drive in the South Florida game. He's been getting pretty much one drive in the first half every game. You maybe think about increasing his time?
Yeah, we talked about that at half last game, that we might play him a little bit more depending on how his first series went, and then unfortunately went out and fumbled in that first play. And then, he obviously got the ball back. So, but we just felt like Russo was the right time for that.
Do you feel like with Chappelle getting ejected for target, do you feel like that's been an issue for you guys, or just more so like bang plays?
Yeah, I mean, that one with Pell, I told Pell is that it's a combat penalty, but we do have to learn how not to take the extra step. It's just college football today. So you have to learn how not to take the extra step, and especially on a quarterback, you take that extra step, it's almost always going to be flagged. And, if you get up to the head and neck, then they're certainly going to protect them too. So we just have to learn that. But combat penalties, it's still football. We're still allowed to hit people. And so some combat penalties you got to live with.
Down two linebackers, were you impressed with the way they was in step up?
There were a couple things early on when he was first in there that he got caught on, but that experience, I think, as the game went on, I certainly think still things to clean up, but that experience was invaluable for him.
And could William come back and play? Is he healthy?
I see Will come back. He practiced the last couple days. here. So it's his first time practicing in a long time, too. So he's a good football player, but when you're short reps, you're short reps. So I certainly like to see how it progresses tomorrow as well and get a chance to watch the film, but have high hopes that he can come back and play.
Did you do anything different this week, leading up to a game on the road after 2 rough losses, or was it more of the same?
Oh, you mean going into USF? Well, yeah, with the bye week, we only practiced twice. We needed to heal, and really those were young guys oriented, so we tried to get everybody as healthy as we could. That was the biggest difference we did. We had the time, so we took the time.
Do you think it kind of helps you guys with the stretch that you kind of had those 12 days off, and then again you kind of have like a
mini bye? Yeah. Like I said, with the bye week after UCF, is that the bye came at a good time, and I think the mini bye, certainly anytime you get extra days in November, that's a good thing for everybody.
You talked a little bit yesterday about Isaiah Wright. Is there plans to make him part of the offense this week?
Well, I certainly think he's had a better couple days of practice, and so anytime that you're practicing and you have the ability that he does, we've done that. Is that when he's attacked it the way he has previously, we certainly get him in there and use him, and because he's a talented guy. So tomorrow be another day, so we stack all those days up and then we see. But plans are is that if he keeps going like this, that absolutely.
Well, is it something where he was banged up and couldn't attack it the way you wanted to? Or?
Oh, I certainly think that was probably a piece of it, is that he was banged up and couldn't attack it the way. And whatever the whole reasoning was behind that, it's just where it ended up. But you like the way we've been so far, and he's been this week.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm pitching.
There you have it, Rod Carey. Speaking to reporters at Edberg Olson Hall, we welcome you back inside Studio 3. And as always, there's plenty to break down from a coach's press conference, but sometimes things must be taken in context or with a grain of salt. For more on this, I'll send it over to the Plasma, where Inside the Nest reporter Ray Dunn is standing by with my co-anchor, Brooklyn Vaughn. Hey, guys.
Hi, Dan. Thanks so much. Yeah, Rod Carey always talking about a whole lot of things based on the previous game, what he's looking forward to ahead. So, Ray, let's go ahead through a couple of these quotes that we heard today just out of Edberg Olson Hall and talk about them a little bit.
All right.
So he starts out by talking about the quarterback situation. Of course, you have to account for the quarterbacks athletically extending plays. The quarterback situation still up in the air. The dual threat, Todd Centeio coming in for Anthony Russo. He did touch on how he wants to implement Centeio a little bit more. But what's your take on that?
I think really what he's going to break down is on both sides, you're going to see quarterbacks that can extend plays, can really use their legs to be dynamic in the offense. On the side for the Green Wave, Justin McMillan able to run and pass, very, very efficient in both those facets of the game. And then when it gets to Todd Centeio, it's the same kind of deal. So he's talking more about the ability that they have to game plan with a guy like Todd Centeio for a guy like Justin McMillan.
Sure. Okay, now moving on to another quote that we heard today out of Rod Carey. We have to learn how to not take the extra step. Of course, talking a little bit about the targeting call against Chappelle Russell, taking him out of the game early. Not the first time that the Owls have struggled with this throughout the season.
Yeah, and really what he's talking about when he mentions taking the extra step, it's when you're going to lay that tackle, you're dropping your shoulder in there. Once you take that extra step and spring towards the ball carrier, you don't want to go leading with the crown of your head into their helmet. And especially, he mentioned the quarterbacks. Them hitting quarterbacks with their helmet, it's going to be every time. The way that football is set up now, collegiately in the NFL, the quarterbacks are at a premium. They're going to be protected every way, and they can't take that extra step, lead with the crown of their helmet, and start moving towards the helmet area of the quarterback. If they lead and go down here, instead of taking that extra step and diving up forward, just diving low and getting after the legs are going to be much, much safer, much less penalties.
Right. Okay. So again, Rod Carey saying this, mentioning that he had said this to Chappelle Russell after this week's game against USF. And then moving on, another quote that we heard out of Rod. Anytime you get extra days in November, that's a good thing for anybody. Of course, the injuries plague the Owls. They continue to, but the extra days, of course, they're helping.
I mean, anyone can use some extra days in November. Us, we can use extra days, get some videos ready, get some full screens ready. But absolutely for this team, dealing with injuries and especially just the grind of being in this season all year long, the ability to get some days off, really rest up, get guys like Ray Davis, get guys like Benny Walls back moving. You saw how it worked for Afani Maje. I mean, he had himself a game coming off an injury. Once they get some time to, implement more of a game plan, also just get some rest. They got plenty going on. It's that time of the school year too. Student athletes, they got plenty going on midterms wise, and forget being banged up from playing all these games so far.
Right.
So he's just saying, I want my guys to get a little rest, let them get to bed a little earlier, get some work done.
Yeah, and of course, we expected him to talk about these injuries. Good to hear some progress being made despite some of the setbacks. Well, that's all we have for the press breakdown today. We're going to send it over to Dan back at the desk.
Thank you, guys. And as always, we caught up with some of the players today at Owls practice, and let's listen in as they prepare for Tulane on the Lincoln Sunday.
2 good days of work so far, some good meetings, some good preparation. We're just taking it one day at a time, learning about what we can control, and right now what we can control is our preparation, how well we know our game plan, and then just making sure that we know it inside and out so we can go out on Saturday, execute at a high level.
They're fast, they're athletic, they play bump and run, so they obviously have a lot of faith in their talents. So we just got to exploit them and beat them one-on-one, win every one-on-one matchup, and then that's basically it. Get the running game going, because when we get a good running game going, we're pretty unstoppable. So.
For me and my team, we just got execute and run the ball efficiently. That's the only thing I try to do every week is run efficiently and protect the quarterback. That's my job.
All we can do at this point is just control what we can control and just take it Tulane, Cincy, and then UConn, just one game at a time.
Pretty much as soon as we entered conference play, we knew considering both divisions in our conference are so strong and we played some of the better teams from the West, we knew we had to win them all if that's what we wanted to do. Unfortunately, we lost 2 along the way, but these last 3 are still must-wins. So.
We say once we get into conference play, every game's a championship for us. If we want to achieve our goal of getting to a championship, winning a championship, we have to approach every conference game like it's a championship. So that's been our mindset since we started conference play, and we got 3 more conference games left, so we have to approach each one of those as a championship each week.
I think in a macro perspective, it just shows how far the program has come. Doing it consistently, it's almost an expectation at this point, which is awesome.
It's great. I've been here every year, and we've been bowl eligible every year. So, I didn't want to feel the feeling of not being bowl eligible. So, that's really exciting. It's always a good time, and then we get to play another game with the seniors, and it's just a good time.
Well, it's awesome. Just being able to, achieve, that's a goal that we set out for at the beginning of every season is to be bowl eligible and make a bowl game, and being able to accomplish that again. Have another opportunity, one more game for us to play with these seniors, and everything that they've done for this program, being able to earn that one more bowl trip is means the world to us.
And there you have it, Hennessy, Toddy Centeo, and Russo all talking about how important being bowl eligible is to them, how exciting it is to play with these seniors one last time. And of course, 6 seasons straight, Temple has been bowl eligible.
Yeah, it's almost become the new norm. And it's been a while since Temple was not bowl eligible. Let's take a look at what was happening in the world the last time the Owls were not bowl eligible. First thing first, here's what was going on back in 2013. First off, right here in Philadelphia, Chip Kelly was still well liked at this point, if you can believe that. He had the Eagles 10-6 and in the playoffs in his first season. And second-year quarterback Nick Foles, he threw for 27 touchdowns and just 2 interceptions that year.
At the helm of the Owls was none other than Matt Rhule, the 26th coach of Temple football. The Owls ended this season with a brutal 2-10 record, and only one of those wins came against a conference opponent. It was only the beginning of the Matt Rhule era, which greatly improved the program through the rest of his tenure on North Broad.
For all of you WWE fans, including our own producer, Jimmy Freeze, 2013 was a pivotal year for the organization. Names like John Cena, Randy Orton, and The Undertaker took the wrestling world by storm. However, the biggest shock of the year was the unexpected reign of world heavyweight champion Alberto Del Rio. Ironically, the belt was discontinued immediately after his 166th day as the champ.
And it was a good time in the theaters back in November of 2013. At the top of the box office included Captain Phillips, starring Tom Hanks, where he gets in trouble at sea, The Wolf of Wall Street, hey, what's wrong with money and greed, and Frozen, where the cold doesn't bother me anyway. It's time for us to turn our eyes to the Tulane Green Wave, Temple's next opponent, and take a look at what the Owls will be tested with in Saturday's matchup.
Stay with us. Inside the Nest will be back in 90 seconds.
Welcome back to Inside the Nest. The 6-3 Tulane Green Wave comes into town on Saturday to take on the Owls at the Link. Tulane is under the direction of head coach Willie Fritz for his 4th season. The Green Wave is coming off of a bye week after defeating Tulsa 38-24 at home in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Historically, things haven't gone well when they face the Owls. The team's overall record is 1-3, and its only victory came in 1935. And that year, the Owls were led by head coach Pop Warner.
Tulane comes into Saturday's game with an identical 6-3 record to the Owls. In a way, Tulane has had a very similar season to Temple, in the way that they have the same amount of wins over teams like Houston or even Army outside the AAC, but their biggest games in Memphis and Navy are games in which they fell short. Additionally, they've struggled to win away from home, just like the Owls have, grabbing their lone road victory over Army. It's a team that is very much in the middle of the pack when it comes to points and pass yards per game, but Tulane's ability to run the ball on offense and stop the passing game on defense are both second in the conference. A lot of their running success comes from their quarterback. More on him later.
Unlike Temple in recent years, the Green Wave is not used to consistently being bowl eligible.
This will be the first time since 1997 and 1998 seasons that Tulane is bowl eligible in back-to-back seasons, despite not playing in a bowl game in 1997. When the Green Wave already sitting at 6-3 on the season, they will look for this to be the first time since 1979 and 1980 that they've played in back-to-back bowl games. And we'll start.
I think the 79-80 team went back-to-back bowl games. The 97-98 team qualified, but they didn't go in 97. But obviously they went in 98. So we're going, right? All right, so we're going. I just want to keep winning and see what kind of good bowl we can get into, and we've got 3 really tough ball games here at the end of the season. With Temple and UCF and SMU.
And that touchdown was from Tulane's last game against Tulsa. But let's flash back to the last time Tulane played in back-to-back bowl games. The year was 1979 when the Green Wave took on Penn State in the Liberty Bowl. Penn State won the game 9-6 in a contest made up of exclusively field goals, and both teams were competing as independent from any conference affiliations.
In the ensuing season, 1980 now, the Green Wave took its second bowl loss to the Arkansas Razorbacks in the former Hall of Fame Classic Bowl. The Razorbacks had control the entire game as Tulane didn't find itself on the board at all until the 4th quarter. The final score out of Birmingham, Alabama, 34-15. And after falling to the Razorbacks, Tulane had to wait 7 years until finding themselves in their next bowl game.
And it may be surprising to some to see the Green Wave bowl eligible despite having 3 games remaining.
Yeah, and here are some players to look out for on Saturday that have helped Tulane qualify for this bowl game. Temple has faced its fair share of dual-threat quarterbacks this season, but none will be as electric with big play capability as Tulane's quarterback Justin McMillan. McMillan averages just over 243 yards per game, with nearly 189 of those coming through the air and just over 54 coming on the ground. Those 54 rushing yards per game is good enough to lead the Green Wave. He has 25 total touchdowns in 2019, 13 through the air and 12 on the ground. While he has that big play threat, McMillan is prone to turnovers with 9 interceptions and 2 fumbles on the year.
Let's switch over to the defensive end of the ball, where Anthony Russo will have to look out for ball hawk P.J. Hall. The senior safety has 45 tackles in his final collegiate campaign and has found himself all over the field for Tulane's defense. Hall has 6 pass deflections and 2 interceptions, one of which he returned for a touchdown. If he's causing trouble for opposing quarterbacks, wide receivers must hold on to the ball tightly, as Hall has forced 2 fumbles on the season as well. He's someone Russo will have to look for before each and every play.
While containing Justin McMillan and accounting for P.J. Hall will be pivotal for Temple on Saturday, this game could be decided by one key matchup in the trenches.
To break down the battle between Tulane's offensive line and Temple's defensive line, we welcome back in Ray Dunn. Hey, Ray.
Thanks, guys. The big fellas never quite get the love they deserve. However, the matchup in the trenches for this weekend's game between the Owls and Green Wave pit 2 premier units against one another.
McMillan downfield.
The lines are quite impressive on either side. They're coming off big-time games. Most recently, the Green Waves O-line allowed no sacks against Tulsa while opening up plenty of holes in the running game. Tulane rushed for 290 yards on an efficient 6.3 yards per carry in that one. The unit has allowed the second least sacks in the American while boasting the second best rushing offense in the conference. The team has had 5 games allowing a sack or less, but now going to Temple's defensive line last Thursday was incredibly impressive. 9.5 sacks for the team, driving constant pressure and chaos in USF's backfield. On top of that, the Bulls only ran for 1.6 yards per carry. The unit ranks second in the conference in sacks with 29 on the season. This position group does it by going deep with the ability to switch the entire line and still disrupt opposing offenses. The production from this unit is no surprise, as the Owls have had a great amount of success developing defensive linemen in recent years. Now, the matchup to watch in this one would be how Tulane junior guard Corey Dublin addresses the pressure up the middle from Ifani Maje and Daniel Archibong. The Green Waves guard has started every collegiate game he's been active for, and Dublin is the anchor of that line. If the Owls are able to disrupt up the middle, they'll have a great shot at slowing down this offense. The spotlight will sure to be on that matchup, as both sides have starred so far this season. Winning that matchup is certainly my stop to success, but I know Dan and Brooklyn have others. So guys, I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, Ray. The battle of the big fellas is certainly a matchup we'll look out for on Saturday, but it's time to shift gears and give you our stops for success.
And I know the Owls like to do their fly-in off of those coach buses every week, but if they took the subway this Saturday, here are some stops they'd have to make along their way to get the win over Tulane. I'll start off another stout defensive performance from the D-line is in order. Ifani Maje is back. That's huge. And just as Ray mentioned, with the 9 sacks that they were able to pick up over USF, I think it looks promising that they can deliver yet again this week.
Here's one for you. Make Tulane quarterback Justin McMillan beat you in the air. It sounds a little weird, but he's the team leading rusher with 488 yards, and he's rushed for 12 touchdowns. That's double the amount of rush, and he also has double the amount of rush attempts as any Tulane running back. He averages 1 interception per game. He's got only 1 more passing touchdown, 13, than his 12 rushing touchdowns. Justin McMillan, they need to keep him in the pocket. They need to make sure he's not elusive and doesn't run for a lot of yards in this game. Make him beat you in the air.
Well, speaking of quarterbacks, I'm calling for more Toddy time. So this dual threat quarterback situation Rod Carey addressed today in his press conference. I think Todd Centeio needs to get a little bit more involved on the offense. The offense still isn't reaching its full potential under Russo, in my opinion, so I think that having Todd Centeio step in and take a couple more snaps will be beneficial for them this week.
Here's one for you. Win the penalty battle. Neither of these teams are that disciplined. Temple, out of 130 FBS teams, they're the 14th most penalized team in the country at 7.56 per game. And you might think, oh, that's really bad. But Tulane, they're the 5th most penalized team at 8.56 per game. The team that is less penalized in this game, 2 of the most penalized teams in the entire country. They're certainly going to have the edge.
All right, well, it is time for yet another break in Studio 3, but don't go anywhere. When we get back, it's time for my favorite 6 minutes of the entire week.
We're going no huddle. Stay tuned to find out how confident we are in the Owls after Thursday's road performance, which AAC program has made the best fashion statement this season, and of course, our prediction for this Saturday's game against Tulane. We'll be back in 90.
Welcome back to Inside the Nest. It is that time again. Welcome back to No Huddle. We're going no huddle right now.
6 minutes, 6 topics, Here we go. As always, Brooklyn, first question is for you. Was Thursday's road performance at USF enough to give you confidence in the Owls that they can win out?
Dan, I'm going to say it does. It does give me confidence because I was pretty inconfident on them heading down to Tampa. Of course, I did not think that they were going to win last week in our predictions, but seeing that they were able to pull this win off on the road with all of those key injuries affecting them, it gives me confidence that they're going to be able to come home and defend their home field this week and then beyond when they go off to Cincy and they play UConn. I really think that they are going to have a successful end of the season.
I'm not quite as optimistic. I think they can win this Saturday at home against Tulane. I think UConn is one of the easiest games on their schedule, but that away game at Cincinnati provides concerns for me on multiple different factors. One, they have not had success on the road despite the fact that they just won a bit of a sloppy game last Thursday night, and Cincinnati currently first in the AAC East. I'm going to need to see more from this team before I'm predicting a complete running of the table here.
All right, fair enough. Next question. Should Jagger Gardner be the focal point of the offense moving forward?
I'll say he should be the focal point of the run game. I think I would still like to see them throw the ball a little bit more. I know you touched on it a little bit of how much they're going to use Anthony Russo. Could we possibly see more Todd Centeio? But if Ray Davis is not in the backfield, you have to imagine Jagger Gardner is going to be the main guy. We even saw a little bit of Tavon Ruley, but I would definitely like to see a lot of Jagger Gardner. Wouldn't like him to be the focal point. I'd like to see them go to the air a little bit more. Guys like Brandon Mack, and even get Isaiah Wright a little bit involved more. It's something that I feel like Carey has been asked about time and time again. I'd like to see more passing, but Rod Carey did seem optimistic that we might get Ray Davis back this week.
Yeah, Dan, and you do make a fair point that I, as well, would like to see a lot more of the passing game involved, especially with guys like Jaden Blue, who had a great performance this week as well down in Tampa. But I am going to say that Jagger Gardner, he does need to be made the focal point from here on out. Ray Davis, of course, following in his lead, coming off of this injury, they've been performing to the same caliber within the early start of the season, I should say. But I do think that Jagger Gardner has proved himself to be the front man of the offense, working with both Todd Centeio and Anthony Russo. I'm impressed with what he's doing so far.
Brooklyn, the Owls were the latest AAC team to join the club of bowl eligibility. When it's all said and done, when all the dust settles at the end of this season, how many teams in the AAC will be bowl eligible?
I'm going to go with 7, and I wouldn't name all of them for you, but I'm going to say that the reason that I'm going with 7 instead of 8 is USF. They've got a pretty tricky schedule from here on out. That gauntlet that Temple faced a couple weeks ago, that they just got out of they just saw the light at the end of the tunnel of that one. That's kind of what USF is dealing with from here on out. You know, they have opponents such as Memphis, UCF, all coming up, SMU, on the cusp of the end of their schedule. So I think that pretty much what we've got right now as for AAC bowl eligible teams is the way it's going to stay from here on out.
Yeah, I agree with you. You already have 7 bowl eligible teams in the AAC. All those teams, or all those bowl games rather, that we previewed early in the show, they're all going to have homes for AAC teams. It's great for the conference. More than half of the teams bowl eligible with 3 weeks to go. I agree with you. USF has too much of a daunting schedule probably to get to that bowl eligibility, but already 7, it's great for the conference. It's great for not just teams like Temple, but creating the legitimacy, or increasing the legitimacy of the AAC, I should say. Having 7 bowl eligible teams, you already have it. 3 weeks to go, but I do think it will stay there.
Right, just strengthening that P6 argument even further. Next question, is UCF's loss at Tulsa the most shocking AAC result this season?
I think it definitely is. UCF was a high-flying offense. I know they had some struggles early in the season, but we saw it firsthand when they beat the Owls 63-21. And this was Tulsa's first AAC win, and they come out of nowhere with a 10-point comeback in the fourth quarter to knock off UCF. I don't think anybody, maybe even including Tulsa fans, saw this game coming. So I think it's definitely the most surprising result we've seen in the conference this year.
Okay, Dan, fair enough. I'm going to say that in my opinion, the most impressive performance in the AAC, most shocking result. It also does involve Tulsa. Think back a couple weeks ago, Tulsa versus SMU. Quite the game they had down there. SMU coming back in 3 overtimes to catch up to the Golden Hurricanes and take the win in that one. I didn't expect it, and of course I'm really impressed with the way that Tulsa hung on until the end there, and of course they were able to deliver this past week, but I do think that was definitely a performance that's going to stick with me from here on out.
Well, Brooklyn, we received word early this week that Temple will be showcasing their throwback uniforms against
I love it.
Against Tulane this Saturday. So that brought up the question, here in Studio 3. Which team in the AAC has the best uniforms?
I mean, this is a tough one.
Yeah.
For me, I was kind of leaning a little bit towards Navy. I love their color scheme, but I do love UCF. I think their look is classic. I think that the theme that they had going on, you can see right there it is. You can see it to the left of the screen. I think that the helmets, everything looks great. I absolutely love the look that they're going for here. I'm
going to keep it in Florida, but I'm going to go USF. It's the jerseys we saw just a week ago, especially at night. The black and lime green, those look incredibly cool. You got to look good, play good. They didn't play well enough to beat Temple, but they're certainly dressed for success on any given game.
I mean, I'm not a lime green girl, so I understand where you're coming from with that. All right, and now, of course, everybody wants to know, what is our prediction? Dan, what do you think is going to happen down at the link? Temple versus Tulane. What do you think is going to happen on Saturday?
Yeah, we're both trying to get back to 500 with our own predictions here.
I know.
Temple is giving 4.5. That means Tulane is actually the favorite on the road here. I have a feeling Temple's going to win this game. We mentioned early in the show that Tulane not strong on the road. They have a very comparable statistics, very comparable schedule, comparable wins to the Owls. I'm going to give the Owls the nod because they're at home, and I think they're going to keep this fun season going and maybe keep those AAC championship hopes alive here.
Well, I wanted to give them the nod for the home defense whole argument against UCF. We all see how that turned out. But I really don't understand how Tulane is favored this week. I definitely have a lot of confidence seeing the performance that the Owls were able to put up down in Tampa, especially again with those key injuries, to see how the defense stood and how the offense really delivered. I think it's time that the Owls are going to come home and secure the win at the link on Saturday against Tulane.
We have to take our final time out, but stay with us.
When we come back, we're joined by a familiar face to round out today's show. Don't go anywhere. Inside the Nest, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Inside the Nest. We're wrapping up our show the only way we know how to. Let's go ahead and take a look around the rest of the AAC.
And we welcome back Inside the Nest reporter Dom Gillespie to give us the latest on the drama that's going down in the American right now. Hey, Dom.
Thanks, Dan. In the words of ESPN's Pat McAfee, the American Conference is pandemonium. Whether it's going for it on 4th down or some unexpected turnouts in games, you're always in for a treat. Let's take a look at this past weekend. There are two big games to highlight from this weekend outside of Temple's victory over South Florida. ECU's nail-biter defeat against the SMU Mustangs and the Tulsa Golden Hurricanes' shocking upset over the UCF Knights. Let's start with the Pirates. I think it might be time to put some respect on their name. They barely lost to arguably the best offense in the conference, and it was a game until the very end. The last 2 weeks, ECU took on 2 out of the top 3 teams in the AAC with a combined loss margin of 11. That number may seem a little high, but when you look at their 2 opponents in Cincy and SMU, it is that much more impressive for a team that's been at the foot of the conference for a few years. This next game is really going to shake things up. Central Florida went on the road to take on Tulsa to what should have been a rather easy victory, but Tulsa came to play, edging the Knights by 3 points on Friday night. Now pay attention because this is where it gets interesting. If Temple can find a way to win out the rest of this season and Cincinnati loses to Memphis in that thrilling final week, there will be a 3-way tie at the top of the AAC East between Temple, UCF, and Cincinnati, which would take us to a list of tiebreakers much too long to discuss at this point in November. Lastly, not a real shocker here, Cincinnati handles UConn by 45, dropping them to 0-6 in the conference. Look at all those happy faces in the bottom right of your screen right there. Hard not to smile after an exciting week of college football. AAC action will kick off this weekend with some more interesting matchups. Temple versus Tulane will start it off this Saturday at 12 on ESPNU. Reporting from Plasma yet again, I am Dom Gillespie. Guys, back to you.
Thanks, Dom. Well, we love having you on Plasma. Let's go ahead and take a look at this jam-packed, deep conference right now. Of course, the Destiny controllers at the top of each division. You got Memphis out in the west and Cincinnati in the east.
So I want to just quickly hit on the point Dom made about UCF losing to Tulsa this past weekend, which creates the possibility for a 3-way tie for first in the AAC East, which of course would involve the Owls. And by our quick calculations here at Inside the Nest, that would take us to the 7th tiebreaker, which is college football playoff ranking. So pandemonium going on in this conference right now.
It is. It's bizarre. Okay, and now let's go ahead and take a look at the individuals who are drawing attention to themselves.
Yeah, it's time for our AAC's Most Wanted list. And I'll start it. We're going to have a special teams theme this week. First up is ECU kicker Jake Verity. He's wanted throughout the eastern half of the U.S. for evading arrest on foot, in particular his right foot. He is connected on 86% of his kicks this year, including 4 out of 5 in the 40 to 49-yard range, and he's tied for 4th in the conference in points. For a team in ECU that kicks field goals about 2.5 times per game, consistently is certainly key, and that's what they've been getting week in and week out from their kicker, Jake Verity.
All right, and keep your eye out for Dane Roy, the 27-year-old senior punter from Houston. We call him an Aussie bomber around these parts. The Australian native leads the conference and is 6th in college football for punt average per game. He's tied for 2nd in the country for punts inside the 20 with 21 on the season. He has had the 2nd longest single punt in the AAC for 60 yards.
And it's not often that we feature 2 guys at once, but this is the Bonnie and Clyde of kick returners. They're on the run and they're wanted by opposing special teams units. Gabriel Rogers and Antonio Gibson. These guys have combined for the most return touchdowns in the American this season. They're 1st in the AAC in return average, and Gibson is 6th best in the nation at returning kicks. They're fast, they're dynamic, and they've cracked their way onto the most wanted list.
Well, we talked about just how exciting this conference is right now. Let's go ahead and take a look at our games on tap. First up, Navy takes on Notre Dame up in South Bend this weekend. Now, it's not a conference matchup for the midshipmen, but nevertheless, this one's a huge game. Imagine how big a win would be for Navy. Could they win out and sneak out into the top 15? Well, clearly anything is possible at this point. Catch this one on Saturday at 2:30 on NBC.
Brooklyn, having a reliable remote this time of year is crucial because at 3:30, just an hour after the kickoff of that one, Memphis is traveling to take on Houston on ESPN2. This game features a serious AAC title contender and a Houston team who is faced with the challenge of winning out just to reach bowl eligibility. Houston has just one AAC win this year and a 1-score win over a last-place UConn team.
And the Bearcats are headed to Tampa this week, and if USF wants to go bowling, they absolutely need to win this one. Coming off of a loss to the Owls this past week, the Bulls will be defending their home field with a vengeance. The Bearcats should be aware, though, this could be a trap game for Cincinnati. Cincinnati at USF, Saturday at 7 on CBS Sports.
And while our coverage is almost over, Sean McGeehan and Brian Steinmetz will have more for you on this Thursday's edition of OwlSports Update. Fall sports are winding down, but hoop season is picking up. Big week ahead for the men's and women's basketball teams as the men have a Big 5 matchup at LaSalle on Saturday, and the women play host to the dominant UConn Huskies, and we'll have all you need to know on that this Thursday at noon.
And that'll do it for us here in Studio 3. For Dan Wilson and our entire crew, I'm Brooklyn Vaughn.
Have a great week, everyone.